Good evening and welcome. I'm Jackson Goodnight. I'm the chair of the Speaker Series Committee. On behalf of the university and the Speaker Series, I'd like to welcome you here tonight. Tonight's presentation by Dr. Arthur Brooks is the fifth installment of the 2018-2019 series. The mission of the Speaker Series is to serve as a catalyst for purposeful and critical discussion of contemporary issues through dynamic public presentations and related programming. This evening's presentation is certain to contribute to that message. Note that the final installment of the 2018-19 series will bring to campus Shankar Vedantam, who will be giving the Standard Symposium keynote address on the evening of April 25th. I hope many of you will return for that event. I'd like to thank the Provost's Office for supporting the series, and Andrea Wade, who does an excellent job organizing and running these events. There will be a question period immediately following the presentation, followed by a book signing in the lounge area just outside the ballroom. At this time, I would ask that you please silence your devices. And now I'd like to invite to the stage University of Dayton President, Dr. Eric Espina, to introduce tonight's speaker.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Very nice. So it's my pleasure to introduce an old friend, and former Syracuse University colleague, Dr. Arthur C. Brooks, to our wonderful campus. Dr. Brooks is a social scientist. He's an ingenious, literally an ingenious researcher, a public intellectual, a best-selling author, and a much downloaded podcaster. And if you haven't heard his podcast, I strongly recommend it. And the president of the American Enterprise Institute, AEI, which is a public policy think tank in Washington, D.C. Now, I know Arthur well enough over, as he said, the battles in Syracuse to go a level deeper, though. He's also a citizen patriot, an entrepreneurial thinker, an extraordinary friend to those who know him, a caring family man, and a person of great and humble faith. And I've had enough discussions with Arthur to know that he is not a person with whom one should enter into a debate with about anything, unless you're armed with a tested philosophical argument and literally a mountain of facts, because he has two mountains of facts. So an interesting tidbit that some of you may have read about Arthur and the eclectic life that he led. He left college at the age of 19 to play the French horn professionally for 12 years, including 4 years with the prestigious City Orchestra of Barcelona. He re-entered college via a series of online and non-traditional modalities that he wrote a New York Times article about a number of years ago, and earned 4 degrees, including a PhD in policy analysis from the Pardee-Rand Graduate School. Now, after a decade, a little bit more than a decade as president of AEI, this summer Arthur will assume a joint position as professor in the practice of public leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School and as senior fellow at the Harvard Business School. Arthur's mark at AEI has been profound, and he will leave it stronger than it has ever been. He joined AEI when it was at an intellectual crossroads, and many had said it had lost its way. He brought his entrepreneurial spirit and his deep care for the common good to bear at AEI and created new scholarly departments in areas such as poverty studies. He published 4 books, including the recent Love Your Enemies, which you'll hear about tonight. He wrote more than 150 columns for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post. And he produced peer-reviewed academic research, and he gave more than 1,000 speeches, traveling more than 1 million miles promoting AEI's work. In AEI's new documentary, The Pursuit, Arthur traveled around the globe in search of the answer to the question, how can we lift up the world together, starting with those at the margins of society? In today's polarized political climate, Arthur stands out as a voice of pragmatism and, as you'll hear tonight, compassion. In his newest book, he writes, "We don't have an anger problem in American politics. We have a contempt problem. If you listen to how people talk to each other in political life today, you notice it is with pure contempt. When someone around you treats you with contempt, you never quite forget it. So if you want to solve the problem of polarization today, we have to solve the contempt problem. End quote. Arthur recently spoke to the Dalai Lama about this problem. Your Holiness, he asked, what do I do when I feel contempt? The Dalai Lama answered, practice warm-heartedness. Those are meaningful words for all of us here at the University of Dayton. We won't eliminate the toxic discourse in today's society just by practicing civility and tolerance of differing points of view. Instead, Dr. Brooks calls for something more radical and subversive. He calls for love. He writes, quote, when I call for a standard of love, I am asking us all to listen to our hearts, of course, but also to think clearly, look at the facts, and do difficult things when necessary, so that we can truly lift people up and bring them together, end quote. The themes in Arthur's work, love, dignity, charity, compassion, happiness, are part of our collective work in promoting equality of opportunity, fighting poverty, and helping all of us live more fulfilling lives. Tonight's talk, I guarantee, will be engaging and powerful, and it's my pleasure to hand the podium over, not the podium, the stage, to our distinguished guest and good friend, Dr. Arthur Brooks.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Eric. What an honor it is to be here. What a delight it is to see my old friend Eric Espina again. It's been a couple of years since we've seen each other. And we do go way back. We taught together at Syracuse. I was a member of the faculty at the Maxwell School of Public Affairs. Eric was the dean of the College of Engineering, later the provost, and he really went through the wars as a university administrator. He came here after that. What a delight it was for me to see that. Why? Because this is a famous university. This is a place of principle. This is a place that's known for standing for good things, and Eric Espina stands for good things. Stands for the same things that this place can and should be, as a beacon of hope, an oasis in an industry that doesn't always distinguish itself very well. Congratulations to all of you to be part of this community, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm so honored, and I've been looking forward to this. I was supposed to come a year ago, and I got snowed out. Not this year. I was delighted to see that we have nice sunny weather for this. I think it was just because of my visit. I want to talk to you tonight a little bit about how you can personally make things better in the United States. And when I say better in the United States, I'm going to start with the premise that things aren't the way that they should be. We don't treat each other the way that we should. Our politics doesn't work as well as it should. But that each one of us has it within ourselves to be more persuasive. I'm not going to try to tell you how to think politically, but you can be more persuasive no matter how you think politically, how you can be a happier person, and how you can start to heal the country personally. If I do my job, you're going to be on your way at the end of about 45 minutes to being able to do these three things. Now, I'm going to ask you to think in a different way than how you currently think about politics and how you think about policy. It turns out that almost all improvements come because of epiphanies, flashes of recognition of something new. If you want to solve a big problem, I'm the president of a think tank in DC. If you want to solve an old problem, don't think harder in the old way. You need to look for something that will inflect your thinking radically. This is true. You all know this. You've had these experiences in your life where you suddenly think differently and things get clear. Whether you're in business or as a student, you're trying to figure out a problem, or even in your personal life. I had an experience that illustrated this to me. I was trying to think of a good example, and here's one that really illustrates my point about suddenly thinking differently and solving an old problem. I'm the father of 3 kids. My kids are 21, 19, and 16. Pray for me. And my 19-year-old graduated from high school a year ago, and all through high school, junior high and high school, it was one series of bad parent-teacher conferences after another, right? It was always the same thing. He's not living up to his potential. There's always a grades issue. He should be getting better grades. If he did his homework, he just applied himself, and it was a real source of anxiety for me and my wife. Very bright, just the same problem over and over and over again. Those of you who are students, some of you did that to your parents. Call them tonight and apologize. So my son, Carlos, I mean, he's a great kid and all that, but there was this one, before he graduated, one in particular that was the worst. We were really worried about graduation, what is it going to mean, and the grades problem again. And afterward, my wife, Esther, and I, we were in the car on the way home, and just, riddled with worry. I was driving, we're kind of silent. And finally, my wife, she's an optimist. She's from Barcelona. She's got a sunny disposition. And she says, we need to think totally differently about this problem in a new way. And I said, I'm all ears, because this has been going on for years. And she says, at least we know he's not cheating. So, in that spirit, I want to talk about how we can think totally differently about what's going on in America today, the bitter polarization that's ripping our country apart, and how we can solve that together, or at least start to solve the problem. Now, my epiphany on this particular problem came 5 years ago. I was starting to think, I published a book 2 weeks ago called Love Your Enemies. That's what I'm talking about tonight. That book project started 5 years ago on a particularly fateful day. Now, for a living, I do 175 speeches a year. Okay? That's my job. When you're the president of a think tank, there's not that much thinking in tanks. It's mostly just traveling around giving talks to groups of smart people, and it's fun. I love it, right? I talk to all different kinds of audiences. I talk to very, very progressive audiences on campuses, and I talk to sort of middle-of-the-road chambers of commerce, and I talk to conservative activists. I talk to everybody, and I love it all. And it was in that last category where I was giving a talk in April of 2014 in New Hampshire to a large group of conservative activists, 700 really super fired up conservative activists, like hooting and hollering, three-cornered hats, the whole deal. I was the only person on the schedule that day who was not running for president. Now, I got the schedule, and I was in New Hampshire, and I was backstage, and it was like candidate. I was thinking, how did I get on the schedule? Somebody made a mistake, obviously. But then I thought to myself, I'm going to listen, and they're all going to be saying the same thing, for sure. And I'm going to see if I can say something really different, like do something good here, right? Okay, so I listened to them, and sure enough, when presidential candidates get out in public, what they do is they try to find really sympathetic crowds. They never get in front of crowds that hate them. They get in front of sympathetic crowds, and they do the same thing. They say two things. You're right, and the people who aren't here are stupid and evil. That's how they talk, right? And that's how you get votes, and that's how you get support. God bless them. I'm not a politician. I don't have to do that, right? But I thought, what can I do to make this better? What can I do that would be different? So I made a plan. I went out and I gave my speech, and here's what I said. I was talking about economic policy, something boring and trivial, whatever. I don't remember. And I was saying things that they mostly agreed with, because my own politics are sort of center-right. Okay? But here's what I said in the middle that was different. I stopped, and I said, my friends, I know that you agree with the policy points that I'm making right now. But what I want you to remember are the people who are not here because they don't agree with us. They're political progressives, liberals. And they're not here because they're not in this group. And I want you to remember that they're not stupid and they're not evil. They're simply Americans who disagree with us on public policy. And your job, if you think you're right, is to persuade them with love. Not an applause line, right? But there was an applause line, and it came a few seconds later. A lady in the audience yells out, I think they're stupid and evil. She got the applause, not me. Okay. Now, she wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. She was just making a joke, right? But here's what I thought of. When it went into my head, here's where I'm getting the epiphany now. What came into my head right now is Seattle. Why? Because it's my hometown. I grew up in the most progressive city in America. My mother was an artist, and my father was a college professor. What do you think their politics were? I'm the black sheep of the family, politically, right? Let me tell you about my parents. They were not stupid and they were not evil. They were smart and they were great parents and they took good care of me and they gave me good values and they passed away a long time ago. But let me tell you, I am sure they were right on a lot of stuff where I'm wrong, because it's statistically impossible that that's not the case. And when that lady said that, she was insulting my mom. And I took it personally. Now, it reminded me, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, it reminded me of something that my dad told me. My father made this point to me as a child about moral courage. Okay? Moral courage is not gauged, is not measured by your ability to stand up to people with whom you disagree. Right? It's good to stand up to people with whom you disagree. It's necessary. It's part of life. Right? But that's not moral courage. Moral courage comes from standing up to people with whom you agree on behalf of those with whom you disagree. That's actual moral courage. Right? And I thought to myself, that's exactly what we don't do in America today. Right? We're willing to say to a sympathetic audience, you're right and they're stupid, even though they're not here, all day long. That is the basis of the polarized American polity. That's the basis of us not coming together, of separating ourselves, is that inability to display that moral courage. The question is, how do we fix that? Because that is what we need to do, in my view. But first, we have to find out why we're doing it, what we're doing wrong, and fight that particular problem. Okay, so when I ask around, I say, what's wrong? Why are we doing this? Why are we saying they're evil, we're good? People will often say the country's too angry, right? Or we're too uncivil to each other, or we're too intolerant, or we disagree too much. All of that's wrong. Let's start with disagreement. Disagreement is not a problem. Disagreement is the secret to excellence. Why? Because competition is the secret to excellence. Competition in sports, competition in politics, also known as democracy, competition in economics, also known as free enterprise, leads to excellence. It's really good. And competition in the world of ideas is what creates the difference between free and unfree societies. Disagreement's not the enemy. Civility. People often say we're too uncivil. That's wrong too. Civility is a garbage standard. If I told you that my wife Esther and I are civil to each other, you'd say, you guys need counseling. If I told you that my employees they tolerate me, you'd say, I got a big morale problem on my hands, right? These are low standards. And anger, no. Anger is not the problem either. See, anger is a hot emotion. Anger says, I care about what you think, and I want to change what you think. It means I care. Anger says, it might be destructive, but anger says, I care about you. Interesting fact. Social psychologists have shown that anger is uncorrelated with separation and divorce among married couples. The reason I've been married almost 30 years is because anger and divorce are uncorrelated. What's the problem if it's not anger? The answer is what Eric said in the introduction, contempt. Contempt takes anger and it mixes in disgust, different emotion, right? And it turns this hot emotion cold. Anger and disgust together are like bleach and ammonia, which form chlorine gas when you put them together, a noxious gas that kills you. It kills relationships. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher from the 19th century, called contempt the conviction of the utter worthlessness of another person. If you treat somebody with contempt, they will never forget it. Psychologists often say that most human conflict comes from contempt that's improperly concealed. You know when somebody treats you with contempt, that cold, I don't care what you think because you're not worth caring about. You know that feeling? You'll never forget it. If you want to have a permanent enemy, treat somebody with contempt. That is how we treat each other in common discourse. Now, before I talk about politics, let me talk about human relations with contempt just a little bit more. I have a friend, his name is John Gottman. He's the world's leading expert on marital reconciliation. He teaches at the University of Washington in Seattle. He also has what's called the Gottman Marriage Laboratory with his wife, Julie. This guy's a hero. Why? Because they brought thousands of couples together that were on the brink of divorce. And for me, this is a hero, somebody who creates more love, more stable families, is a great person, is a patriot, actually. It's great for the country, great for all of us. So I love this guy's work, and I've admired him for years and years and years. He can take a couple that he's never met, but they're quarreling. He can give them one counseling session for a few minutes and predict with 94% accuracy if they will be divorced within 3 years. 94%. How? You want to know how? I want to know how. So whatever he's seeing, I don't want to do it. Eye rolling. It's eye rolling. That's the killer. If he sees a couple when they talk to each other about something contentious and one person rolls her or his eyes, that's what he starts to look at, because that's the ultimate physical sign of contempt. Dismissal, derision, sarcasm, those are the things that actually predict divorce. Not anger, not disagreement, no. Contempt. Okay, obviously it's a love killer. So then I asked him about politics. And I said, well, is that what we're doing wrong in America? He says, oh yeah, watch TV. Watch the debates, watch the presidential candidates debate each other. One of them says something the other one disagrees with. The eyes start to roll, right? And it's funny because we all do it. We've gotten into a national habit of doing that when we hear things that we don't agree with. I do it. You know, I was doing research for this book, and I went back and I watched myself on CNN, and I was debating something with some lady about some policy, and she said something I disagreed with, and I rolled my eyes. And I felt so bad about it now that I've done the research, because, you know, think about it. It's actually horribly impractical, right? Nobody in history has ever been insulted into agreement. It can't happen. If my job is to persuade, I'm failing when I act with contempt because I'm making enemies. No matter how good my argument is, if I treat somebody with contempt, I am not going to persuade that person. So you got to ask, what's your goal? What's your goal? You know, people will often say, what about really evil people on the other side of the political aisle? What about really evil people? I say, well, what's your goal? Is it to exile them, kick them out of the United States? No. Is it to put them in jail for their opinions? Of course not. Is it to go to their house and hurt them? No. What is it? It's to make them think differently. Well, you're failing if you treat people with contempt. You're failing. So why do we do that? Why do we treat each other with this contempt? A couple of different answers for that. To begin with, for a lot of us, it's a habit, but for some, it's not. 93% of Americans hate how divided we've become as a country. 93%. This is according to Common Ground, a nonprofit dedicated to surveying Americans about their attitudes about political polarization. Excellent data. I believe it. That's a lot. That means that 7% don't hate how divided we've become as a country. Who are they? I call them the outrage industrial complex. There's a group of people who are getting rich and powerful and famous and getting followers and getting clicks and simply becoming more popular on the basis of firing people up and getting people to hate each other. You know who they are because you have television sets and you have computers and you look at the internet and you look at social media and you see them in entertainment and you see them on college campuses. And what are they doing? They're trying to gin up hatred and contempt of American against American and human against human. That's the 7%. The 93% of the rest of us, we just have a really bad habit. We have a habit of communicating in a way that's ineffective. Nobody has ever been persuaded through contempt. And it's immoral because we're talking about people we love. How do I know that we love people that we disagree with? The day after that fateful event in New Hampshire, I was someplace else giving a speech. And it was really on my heart what I just experienced. So I asked the audience, and now I'm going to ask you. Same question I asked the audience the next night. How many of you love somebody with whom you disagree politically? I'm going to round that off to 100%. Thank God. That's what I want. I want to live in a country where we can love each other despite the fact that we disagree politically. And I want to live in a country where we can disagree politically. That's a good thing, right? That's a good country where that's the case. And yet, And yet, we talk to each other with contempt. 93% of us hate how divided we become, and we are the ones dividing ourselves and letting ourselves be bullied by the outraged industrial complex. Our problem is contempt. It's time to fight back against contempt. How? How do we do that? Okay, well, you fight against contempt in the way that you fight against any bad habit. So we have a habit of just rolling our eyes and acting this way because a lot of people have seen it. It's our national discourse. This is what's pulling us apart. So how do you break a habit? Here's your brain science lesson for the evening. Habits are formed in a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens. That's a very ancient part of your brain. It's about the size of the end of your pinky finger. It's in the very center of your brain, pretty far away from your cerebral cortex, the big meaty part of your brain behind your forehead. The cerebral cortex is the part of your brain that you're really conscious of. It's the part of your brain that's making your conscious decisions. It's like, I don't know what I'll do tonight. I got nothing to do. Maybe I'll go see that guy, Arthur Brooks, who's going to give a lecture at the university. You know, I'm going to flip on the television. I'm going to make a joke. I'm going to go to college. Those are all cerebral cortex kind of decisions, right? But anything that you do without thinking because it gives you a reward, that's your nucleus accumbens. Habits go through the nucleus accumbens. Why? Because when you get rewarded for something, it's very efficient to do it again and do it again and do it again and not spend conscious brain power on that activity. Okay, now, sometimes these are really obvious things like smoking cigarettes. Goes right through the nucleus accumbens, right? You say, wow, I like that little hit of the neurotransmitter dopamine that I get from that, so my nucleus accumbens is going to say, reach for a cigarette every time the phone rings. Reach for a cigarette every time you wake up in the morning, right? Okay, the question is, how do you break a habit if it's a bad habit? Good habits are fine. Bad habits, how do you break them? The way that you don't break them is by saying, I'm just never going to do that again. Anybody who ever tried to quit smoking? You say, I just won't smoke, I won't smoke, I won't smoke. You will smoke, right? You have to substitute something for the bad thing and thus reprogram your nucleus accumbens, okay? Every time you get a stimulus, you do something else in response instead of the old thing. That's how you break any bad habit. So you feel like you want a cigarette? Have a drink instead. So you heard it here first, folks. Okay, so if you have a bad habit in your rhetorical communication technique, sometimes every time somebody says something you think is really stupid or misguided or uninformed, you roll your eyes. That's what you got to break. If you want to persuade anybody, if you don't want to have enemies, and you want to be a little happier, and you want other people to be happier, you got to break that habit. Okay? So what do? When you're stimulated to feel contempt, almost always, by the way, why do you get stimulated to express contempt? Because somebody treated you with contempt. That's almost always the case. Somebody treats you with contempt, your natural tendency is answer with contempt immediately, right? Okay, when you get that stimulus of contempt, what do? Step one, stop. Okay? Get a space between stimulus and response. The Buddhist masters always talk about the space between stimulus and response. You want to be a Buddhist master? Of course you do. So when you get stimulated, wait a long time before you have any response. That way you're the master. Your mother was a Buddhist master. How do I know? She said when you feel anger, count to 10 before you respond. Right? That was stimulus and response. Big space. Step two, put something that you choose in that space. When I feel contempt, I want to react in a different way, a way of my choosing. Why? Because I'm not a slave to my feelings. I'm the master of my feelings, no matter how I feel. Okay? That's the two-step response, the two-step protocol for breaking the bad habit of our communications contempt addiction. Okay, so now when I'm writing this book, you know, like I have a big contempt problem. I'm guilty, right? And I want to break it. And okay, fine, I'm going to get a big space in there, but what do I put in there? What do I put in that slot? When I feel contempt, because people treat me with contempt all the time. I have a very public job in Washington, D.C. I'm on television a lot. I write for the Washington Post. You know, if I read the comment section after the Washington Post, after my columns, like, I could write a column called I Love Puppies. And the fourth comment would say, I'm a fascist. I mean, it's just the worst, right? I feel contempt all the time. Okay, so what do? I feel this contempt. What do? What do I put in its place? I asked, Eric Espina told you, the Dalai Lama. Why? I've had a 6.5-year friendship with the Dalai Lama. I've been working closely with the Dalai Lama for a long time. I see him a lot in his home in the Himalayan foothills in Dharamsala in India. And we made a movie together. We've written together in the New York Times, the Washington Post. We're working on a bunch of different projects. I've interviewed him in different places in the world. I love this friendship. He's taught me so much. He's a wonderful man. I've learned from him. He's a mentor and a friend to me. And when I was making this documentary film, and some of you, if you want to see it, it's called The Pursuit. It's coming out very soon. It's doing screenings all over the country. You can do one here if you want. It's easy. And it'll be on Netflix at the end of the summer. And I was making this documentary with the Dalai Lama at his home. And between takes, I asked him, because I was thinking about this problem. I said, Your Holiness, what should I do when I feel contempt? What should I do? You heard the answer already. He said, practice warm-heartedness. And I said, you got anything else? Because, that sounds sort of weak to me. But then I thought about it. Some of you may know the Dalai Lama's story. The Dalai Lama is the spiritual leader of the Tibetan Buddhist people, and indeed the leader of the Tibetan people. He lives in exile because when he's 84, he'll be 84 on July 6th. When he was 24 years old, 60 years ago, he was forced into exile out of his homeland in Tibet by the communist Chinese. Raw, naked military aggression rolled through a vast landmass with only 6 million people, forced the Dalai Lama and his followers into exile, into a little poor town in the Himalayan foothills called Dharamsala in India, to be forgotten, to be disappeared. That's what always happens, right? Military might rolls across the poor, and we never know a thing about it. So why am I up on the stage in Dayton talking to you about the Dalai Lama? The answer is because over the next 60 years, he answered contempt with warm-heartedness. Every time he heard contempt from the Chinese leaders, he answered with warm-heartedness. He has never spoken in public or, in my experience, in private, a contemptuous word about the Chinese aggressors. He opens every day praying for the Chinese leaders, not that they'll give him back his homeland, but they'll live good and happy lives with their families. My friends, that is power. Contempt, answering contempt with contempt, that's for weak people. Answering contempt with warm-heartedness, that's for strong people. Are you strong? Are you strong enough not to be the master, not to be the slave of your feelings, but to be the master of your feelings? Look, even if you don't feel warm-heartedness, can you handle it? Can you do it? That was his challenge to me. I said, I'm weak. Your Holiness, I'm weak. How do I do it? And he said this. He said, remember a time in your life when you accidentally answered contempt with warm-heartedness. And then don't try to remember that occasion. Remember how it set your heart on fire. Remember how it made you feel when you answered somebody's hatred with love. Remember the feeling and you'll do it again. It's okay. So I went back to my little room where I stay when I'm with the Dalai Lama. It's a little room decorated in carvings and rugs from Tibet. It's beautiful. And I thought about it, and I meditated on it, and I prayed about it, and I remembered a time when serendipitously I was treated with contempt, but I'm no saint. I accidentally answered with warm-heartedness. And boy, was it magic. I want to tell you about it. Not because I want you to use my story. It's mine. I want you to remember your story. So the year was 2006, and I was happy. I was teaching at Syracuse, and I had a happy life. The world's best profession is academia, in my view. You work with students. The students are smart and hardworking, and I got to write my books, which nobody ever read because they were boring. But they were fun, and I enjoyed them, and I was proud of them, and beavering away in a happy professorial existence. And then a weird thing happened. My life suddenly changed. Why? Because I wrote this book that was pretty boring. It was pretty mathematical and had a lot of formulas and equations and graphs and charts. But it hit the news cycle in just the right way. And this happens to professors sometimes. My life changed because it hit the news cycle. The president read it and talked about it. And suddenly I was on TV every day. I was not expecting this. I wrote a book that I thought was going to sell 1,000 copies. It started selling hundreds of copies a day. my life changed overnight. Literally, my life has never been the same. My professional life has never been the same since I wrote this book. It's about charitable giving. Who gives more? Religious people, secular people, conservative people, liberal people, poor people, rich people. Turns out all the things we think we know are wrong, and that's why people found it kind of interesting. But it took off. But here was the weirdest part when my book suddenly took off, how my life really changed. I started hearing from strangers, people I'd never met. What happens is when you write a book that a lot of people are reading, people read it, they learn about you, and they feel like they know you. And so they get your email from the university website, and they write you an email about really personal stuff. And it's extremely disconcerting. And if they like the book, they like you. And if they don't like the book, they don't like you, and they tell you. So it was in the latter category, of which I got many emails. About 3 weeks after the book came out, I got an email from a guy in Dallas. Here's how it starts. Dear Professor Brooks, you are a fraud. Bad start. But I keep reading, okay? I'm a good sport. And I noticed that this book is, this book, practically a book, this email is going to take me 20 minutes to read because it's like 5,000 words long. It's a super long email, page after page. So I start going through it, because I'm reading my email and I'm going to hear what the guy has to say. He is attacking everything in this book. Every chart, every graph, every assertion, every data set, every conclusion, in vitriolic detail. Like, the columns in table 3.1 are reversed, you moron, stuff like that. Like, wow. And I'm 15 minutes into this email, looking at all this detail, and I became conscious of my feelings. And you know what I was thinking? You know what my feelings were? He read my book. I couldn't believe it. I'd written tons of books. Nobody ever read them. My family didn't read them. Nobody read them. This guy read every word. So I thought to myself, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to tell him what's on my heart right now. So I wrote him back. Dear so-and-so, I got your email. I know you hate my book. I know you think I'm just some sort of a stooge. I know you think it's the worst thing you ever read. I got it. It's terrible. But it took me 2 years to write that book, and I put my whole heart into it, and you read every word. I'm so grateful to you for that. Thank you. Send. And then I go back to work. I'm like working on a data set or something in my office. And I'm thinking, I wonder if that guy will write me back. 15 minutes later, his response pops back up. Ding. And now I'm very apprehensive. Like maybe he's going to threaten to kill me or something. I don't know, right? I open it up. Dear Professor Brooks, next time you're in Dallas, if you want to get some dinner, give me a call. What's that all about? The answer is, I answered his contempt with warm-heartedness by accident, and it changed his heart, and it changed mine too. Now, I didn't get dinner with him, because probably if I did right now, I'd be chained to a pipe in his basement in Dallas or something, right? Maybe that's a little edgy for this university, that joke. But anyway, you get But it taught me something. It really changed my thinking. And when the Dalai Lama asked me to remember that, boy, oh boy, it came flooding back. My heart was on fire. I was happy. I had and again, maybe the guy would have really hated me more and hadn't changed his heart. My heart was changed, and that was the point. That's what we need to do, my friends. That was a big opportunity for me. I could have said, you're a jerk. You don't know what you're talking about. Go get a degree in economics and come back when you've learned something, moron. That's what I could have said that to him, right? Right? I could have, like they say on the internet, I could have destroyed him because all his arguments were wrong. But no, I thought, I'm actually super grateful to this guy for reading my book. And I told him that, and that's what made all the difference. And that's the opportunity of answering contempt with warm-heartedness. That's what we need to do. So, how can you do that? I'm a college professor, right? Eric Espina said I've been running a think tank for a long time, but on July 1st, I'm going to officially be a college professor again. I'm going to go teach at Harvard University. And so therefore, in the spirit of my renewed academic vocation, I'm going to give you some homework. If you're with me on what I've talked about, if you want part of this, if you want to be more persuasive and be happier and be more successful in helping the country come back from a very bad and dark place, if you want to be part of those three things, you got to do some things. And so I'm going to give you 3 assignments now. And I want you to start them within the next 24 hours. Assignment number 1, refuse to be used. Okay, now, back in the old days, they used to say, you got to stand up to the man. The outrage industrial complex in America today is the man. And you need to fight the man. Because some people, every time you get stimulated on the internet or on television or wherever about politics, and you feel contempt and hatred in your heart, somebody's getting more rich and powerful and famous. Somebody's feeding off your hatred for their personal gain. And it's time for you to stop that and to fight back. You should not allow yourself to be used. So how are you going to do it? Well, start with getting into your head right now a vision of somebody. I mean, maybe it's a newspaper columnist. Maybe it's a talk show host. Maybe it's even an academic that you know who's getting people fired up and encouraging people to hate each other, okay? Get a picture of that person in your head, okay? That's the wrong person. Why? Because you just thought of somebody that you disagree with. That person can't manipulate you. Get into your head somebody who you really, really agree with, but who's doing that. Now what I want you to do is I want you to make a list of those people on your side that are encouraging people to hate each other and encouraging us to treat other people with contempt. Little by little, one by one, I want you to mute them, cross them off your list. Don't treat them with contempt, but you have to take care of your own emotional self-defense first if you're going to do this right. Block out the people who are trying to use you. Stand up to the man. That's assignment number 1. Assignment number 2. Go out looking for contempt. It's your friend. Now, usually if I were to talk to you about some sort of social pathogen, I would say stay away from it. If you have a friend who has the flu, don't let him cough in your face. Bad idea, because you get sick, right? And getting sick is stupid, and there's no reason for you to expose yourself to this. The social pathogen of contempt, I want you to go find it. Why? Because that's your opportunity for transcendence. That's your opportunity for greater persuasion and greater happiness. You got to go find it. You know, I've always had a lot of admiration for missionaries, and I've had missionaries in my family. I've also known many, I have many dear friends who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, they're often called. As a matter of fact, I'm the commencement speaker of Brigham Young University this year, of all things. They say I'm their favorite Catholic. They probably say that to all the Catholics, but anyway. And why do I admire them? Because they almost all go on these missions, missions for a couple years at a time, and they face tons of resistance. I mean, nobody ever says, hey, honey, good news, there's missionaries on the porch. I was like, never, I mean, they're always like, pretend we're not home. Nobody wants that, right? And yet, they're full of joy. What's the deal? The answer is because they feel that they have the truth, and it gives them joy to actually face the resistance and share the truth. Okay, why do I bring that up? Not because I'm asking you to be religious like me or have my religion, because whether you have my religion or some other religion or no religion at all, you can be missionaries for what's right by facing contempt with warm-heartedness, but you gotta go find the contempt. You gotta go places where you're not invited, say things people don't expect, and listen with love. And then you can express the warm-heartedness that starts this chain reaction of greater persuasion, greater happiness, greater unity. Okay, how? How do you do that? To begin with, you need more friends. Almost all of you, and I've seen the data on virtually every demographic group in America, is becoming more siloed and insulated. Over the past 2 decades, Americans have become incredibly adroit at not mixing with people with whom they disagree. One of the most wonderful things about being in modern America is diversity, where we mix up more. We have people with different languages, people of different races, people of all different ages, people with different genders are working together in workplaces. It's great. Life is better. It's more fulfilling. It's more interesting. But there's one area where we have not made progress, where we've made regress, which is that we're siloing each other with respect to our ideologies, with respect to our beliefs. That's a big problem. You need to be around more people with whom you disagree, and that means you need to find more friends who think differently than you do. Go to a church, if you like to go to church, where people disagree with you. Go to a university where people disagree with you. Live in a community where people disagree with you. If you have to, just go to a new group of friends who are in your current circumstances, who hang out together, who disagree with you. And if you do that, and you listen sincerely, and you listen with love, and you give your point of view, and you accept the fact that they believe that they have the truth too, you will be answering contempt with warm-heartedness, and you will see magic happen. You'll see these things that I'm talking about, and you'll be happier. How else can you do it? You know, when I'm speaking on college campuses, virtually all college students today are pretty deeply involved in social media. My kids are. Most academics are, as a matter of fact. I am. You know, I have to be involved in social media to do my work. And I was talking about the subject of how we deal with each other. Social media is incredibly corrosive. You know, it's a contempt machine where people are anonymous and treat each other with incredible hostility and hatred, disdain, contempt. So I was asking John Gottman, the marriage counselor guy, what his opinion was. What he told me was very interesting. He said, actually, it reminds me of married couples, an assignment I give married couples. It's called the 5-to-1 rule. What's that? See, when couples are really quarreling, they can't think of anything except criticism of each other. When you're about to get divorced, it's nothing but criticism. When you're first in love, there's nothing to criticize. You can't think of anything wrong with the other person. So he wants to back up the tape so you go from pure criticism to less criticism. And the way that you do that, the way that he does that, is he makes them carry around notebooks, these couples that are about to get divorced, and they have to write down every criticism that they want to say to each other. And then before they can say that criticism, they have to say 5 loving, affirming things first. Right? So they just can't get to the criticism. So it's like, she was late picking me up again. I'm going to lay into her, right? But first, you know, you look really beautiful tonight. And I think it was very considerate of you to make me dinner when I came home late last night. I appreciate that a lot. And I love your mother. Forget that one, you know, and so on. And by the time you get through the 5 beautiful, affirming things, you can't think of the criticism anymore. That's the trick that John Gottman told me. Why do I bring this up? Because he said, why don't we have a 5-to-1 rule on social media? Where you can't say anything snarky, anything sarcastic, anything negative, anything criticizing until you've said 5 beautiful, positive, affirming things first. And by the time you get through those 5 things, you're not going to get to the 6th. I have committed myself publicly to doing this, and I just basically don't write anything negative anymore on social media. I just don't. You know why? Because I just can't get through the 5 things first. So I'm always on the 5. That's another way that you can do this, is that you can go out into contempt land, social media, and do warm-heartedness, and turn that into a force for good. That's assignment number 2. Go in search of contempt, face it with warm-heartedness, and see it as the opportunity to change your life and maybe other people's lives too. Assignment number 3, gratitude. You know, when I talked to that guy in Texas, he was anesthetized by my words, thank you. Thank you is the ultimate warm-heartedness. It's the most efficient way to if it's sincere, which it better be. I mean, thank you for your writing me an email, man. Thanks for your input. No, that's not sincere. But thank you for reading my book. I can't believe you read my book. He knew I was being sincere. People can detect that. Gratitude is the most efficient form of warm-heartedness. Are you expressing enough gratitude? I bet you're not. And, you know, it's kind of weird because gratitude is incredibly appropriate in the United States. When I'm talking to, I have this wonderful opportunity. Every year I get to keynote the retreat, the annual retreat for the members of Congress. If they go away on retreat, I get to keynote it. And one of the things I always ask is, how many of you, I say to the members of Congress, you know, they're always fighting, treating each other with contempt, the worst. I always ask them, how many of you wish America was a one-party state? Like, no hands. Of course, right? And then how many of you are grateful that we don't live in a one-party state? All the hands. You just told me that you're grateful for the other party. It's axiomatic. If you're grateful that we have more than one party and you belong to one, that means you're grateful for the other. Doesn't mean you agree, because agreement's not what we want. But you're grateful for the fact that we do have disagreement, and you're open to the possibility that maybe you're not right. That's what you just told me. Gratitude is appropriate in a great and free country like the United States. It's that the ingratitude that we show is totally inappropriate and completely unrealistic. We should be showing more gratitude. All of us in this room should be grateful for so many things in our lives, and grateful for the people who disagree with us, because they can. Okay, so, and one side note on this, folks. This is one of the studies I love the most. There are these two researchers at the University of California, Santa Barbara, that do work on gratitude. What do? They take undergraduate students, and like a drug experiment, they break them into treatment and control groups. And one group has to make a list of the 5 things in current events that are in the news. And the other group has to make the 5 things that they're most grateful for in their lives. Each day, they have to review their lists for 5 minutes, and on Sundays, they update their lists. At the end of 10 weeks, the gratitude listers are 25% happier than the current events listers. My friends, that's free. You should be doing that. I'm doing that. It's changing my life. We all can do that. And we all can express that gratitude, including to the people who are on the other side of issues. There's a book that I mentioned. We were having a little discussion at dinner, a book that I love, one of my favorite books. I read it and I forgot about it, and I read it again when I was teaching at Syracuse. It's called, and some of you have heard of it, and I'm sort of embarrassed, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. He was a self-improvement writer from 1936 when he wrote this book. And it sounds like how to win friends and influence people, like a way to bend people to your will. But it's not. It's actually a guide to ethical living and showing love toward your fellow men and women. It's a very beautiful book. It has an extremely simple design. Dale Carnegie, as a self-improvement writer, was cruising around the United States trying to find really successful people, some rich, some not rich, some really happy, successful in all different areas of life. And he just simply asked them their secrets to success. So Dale Carnegie, in one chapter, my favorite chapter, he's in New York, and he's going to interview a man named Howard Thurston, who is known as the world's greatest performer. Now, Howard Thurston was a magician. Okay? And he was a pretty ordinary magician. I mean, his act was like, cutting ladies in half and rabbits out of hats and card tricks and all that. But he was the world's greatest performer. So Dale Carnegie, he went to see Howard Thurston's last performance after 40 years, 8 shows a week. He's sitting in the audience and says, "What's the secret? What's the secret?" And it dawns on him. So he goes running back to Howard Thurston's dressing room after the performance. He says, "Mr. Thurston, I know your secret. I know why you're the world's greatest performer." Howard Thurston says, "Oh yeah? What is it?" He said, "You made it look like it was the first night, even though it was the last night of your career. That's how you did it. You showed the people that you really loved what you were doing. The first night, every night. That's the secret." And Howard Thurston said, "Yeah, it's true." Dale Carnegie says, "How did you do that? 8 shows a week for 40 years. He says, "It's very simple. I'm in my dressing room, and every night before I go out, I say a little prayer. I say, I am truly grateful for the people sitting in those seats who make it possible for me to make my living in a very agreeable way. I'm going to give them the very best I possibly can." Then he said, before he hit the footlights, he would just, right before he'd go out on stage, he'd say, "I love my audience. I love my audience." And then, showtime. It had such a big impact on me when I read that. You know what I said before I came up here tonight? You want to know why? You're making it possible for me to make my living right now. I get to talk about love and gratitude and unity and happiness, and I'm making my living right now. And you know why? Because I get to talk to you. I'm so grateful to you for that. I don't care what your politics are. But if we can be grateful together for things like that, it's a new day. It's a new movement. We can do this together. It starts here in Dayton, if we choose it. So here's my last thought for you. Then I'm going to turn it over to you and hear what's on your mind. My wife, Esther, and I, we teach something that in the Catholic Church we call pre-Cana, which some of you know about. It's marriage prep. It's for couples that are engaged. And once a month, we get 30 or 40 couples together in a room, and we teach this class. It's at a Catholic retreat center near our home in Bethesda. And we were doing it some months ago, and I noticed a sign over the door. But it wasn't a sign when you go in to the retreat center. It was actually a sign before you go out into the parking lot. And here's what it said. It really impacted me. It said, you are now entering mission territory. And I thought, that's not a religious message. That shouldn't just be a religious, it is religious, but it should be more than that. Look, if you have something that's good and true and brings people together and is persuasive and makes you happy and makes them happy, you got to share that. And if that's the case, and if you think you've got a little bit of that tonight from my remarks, then what I want you to remember when you go out of these two doors tonight that we're all going to go out of, I want you to imagine that there's a sign over the door, and I want you to just think this. When we leave here tonight, we are all entering mission territory. God bless you and thank you. All right.
Okay, we have time for questions. And if you're interested in asking a question, if you could step forward to one of the two microphones that are stationed on either side. You're first.
How you doing, Dr. Brooks? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
About 5 years ago now, Pope Francis wrote this really wonderful document, encyclical called Laudato Si. Talks about a lot of things in it, the environment, socialization, so forth. When he talks about technology and social media, he says our choice, like the technological choices we make, literally shape reality around us and shape like a lived experience of God. Some days I wake up and I say, throw it all out, the corrosive social media, it's a wash, start over. Some days I'm kind of hopeful of positivity like I see on there. My question for you, in light of what you talked about, and as somebody studies economics, et cetera, is it possible for social media companies to see the profit margins and say, we are going to make a different choice? Is it too naive? Because there's a lot of power in the hands of certain companies to change this fabric of reality, right? This divine reality, but it could be naive. I don't know. What do you think?
Thank you for that great question. And I taught in this book that I'm talking, Love Your Enemies, the book I'm talking about tonight, I actually have basically a whole chapter on this, because social media is so powerful as an engine of contempt in our society. If you believe that contempt is a problem, it's just part and parcel with what's going on with the social media economy. And there are two ways to think about this. Now, to begin with, the non-way is expecting suddenly social media companies to have some big conscience and change. I just don't believe it's going to happen. Now, could there be regulatory change that could ameliorate that? Yeah, perhaps. But I just don't think that suddenly everybody's going to. But I do think that there are two things that really can happen that can help fix this. Number one is I think there is a trend over the passage of time that's going to help fix this problem. Every communications innovation technology has kind of a three-phase or a three-pronged history to it. And again, if you look back at the telephone, it's the same trajectory that I'm talking about here. Phase one is the promise phase. It's going to be great. It's going to be a new world. Everybody's connected. Nobody's lonely. Everything's great. Everybody prospers. 1,000 flowers are going to bloom, man. That's the promise phase. Phase two is the dystopia phase. It's where things are terrible, where things are worse than everybody thought, where we basically start to use a virtual technology for communication as a substitute for a real-life loving human relationship. Sound familiar? Well, if you go back to the late 1950s, sociologists were really worried because there are people who literally would not leave the house for 2 and 3 weeks at a time because they were talking on the phone. Right? People were worried that nobody would go to church anymore because they would basically just hold up the phone and listen to the pastor or listen to the priest. I mean, it was the end of civilization as we knew it because of the telephone, right? Well, that didn't happen. That's how we feel about social media. We find that the dyadic relationships between individuals, in other words, just the relationships that individuals have, are being systematically eroded by substituting a virtual relationship for a real relationship, which is one of the reasons that loneliness, depression, anxiety, stress are rising among people in their 20s and 30s. And that people are less likely to be in love, less likely to date, less likely to be in relationships, less likely to get married for people in their 20s and 30s. Lowest that we've ever seen. We know it has to do with this. That's the dystopia phase. Here's the good news. Then you get into, finally, the phase where we go from substituting human relationships to complementing human relationships. There's nobody here who uses the phone as a substitute for your human relationships anymore. You complement your relationships with them. I mean, I want to talk to Eric. I call Eric. I don't say, like, hey, I was going to come see you, man, but instead, why don't we just, like, stay at home and have our phones? That's not how relationships form anymore. That's what's going to happen with social media. Social media will become a commodity. We'll have relatively indistinguishable forms of social media. My kids are already using social media more responsibly than people typically do in their 20s. My kids, actually, they use Facebook or Instagram to figure out how they're going to meet, where they're going to meet up, and what they're going to do. They don't use it instead of staying home in their rooms and doing that instead of seeing each other. So I think we're actually gradually already starting to move into the third phase where it helps us instead of hurting us. That also will squeeze the profit margins dramatically for the social media companies, just like it is for cell phone minutes. Total commodity, right? That's the key thing. Now, that's the passage of markets. Now, you and me, what can you and I do? The reason that contempt, loneliness and contempt come from social media is largely because of, number one, is the substitution of the relationships. Number two is because of anonymity. Anonymity is a big problem where you can dehumanize yourself on purpose. You can become less than human by becoming some sort of an identity that's an avatar for a real person. If you want social media not to ruin your life, make a commitment today never to be anonymous ever in any forum on the internet. And number two, never to interact with anybody under any circumstances who's anonymous, positive or negative. If you do those two things, your internet relationships are going to change and you're going to be happier. Those two things I think we can guarantee. Thank you for that wonderful question. It's a long-winded answer, but I'm thinking about it. By the way, I gave that answer and somebody said, of course I was in Northern California. They said, well, we need an anonymous forum for true freedom. I said, you actually think Twitter is the Federalist Papers. It's not. But anyway, thank you again. Yeah, this side. Yes, ma'am.
All right. You talked about the importance of looking at things from different perspectives. Do you think that the years you spent as a performing professional musician changed the way you thought and were able to access different ways of looking at things?
What a wonderful question. That's the most questions I've heard before. Nobody's asked me that before. My career as a performing musician, and you heard about that briefly in the intro. I mean, I have an atypical path to becoming the president of a think tank. Usually you don't have to be perform the French horn in a symphony orchestra to run a think tank. But it really affected everything that I do, actually. It affected, in particular, my moral perspective on what I want to do with my life. When I was in the symphony, my favorite composer was Johann Sebastian Bach. Everybody here has heard of Bach. Whether you like classical music or not, everybody's heard of Bach. Arguably the greatest composer who ever lived. 1685 to 1750, he published more than 1,000 pieces of music for all different instrumentations. Also had 20 kids, which is very productive, right? And Bach was asked near the end of his life, and this had a big impact on me when I was a performing musician. Why do you write music? Right? A lot of you are students, almost all of you are students in here, right? People often ask, where do you study? What do you do? And by the time you're like me and Eric, running stuff, people say, what do you do? They mean, what's your job? But nobody ever asks Eric, I have. Why do you do what you do? Nobody ever asks us that, right? You need to have an answer. The moral purpose behind your work. That's more important than the what question is the why question. And this was the question that somebody asked Bach, a minor biographer lost to posterity. Why do you write music? Here's his answer. The aim and final end of all music is nothing less than the refreshment of the soul and the glorification of God. I thought, that's a good answer, man. I mean, it's well done, Bach, It's like, he's a smart guy, And I thought to myself, this is my next question. Can I say that? Can I say that? No, I can't. I couldn't say that when I was playing the French horn in the orchestra because I didn't feel like I was refreshing any souls and I didn't feel like I was glorifying God, and so I quit music. Here's the crazy thing. I became an economist because of Bach. Isn't that crazy? Because I wanted to answer like Bach. It wasn't different perspectives. It was finding the why of my life. And if all of you can honestly ask the why of your life and answer with, to be parsimonious, to be efficient in that way. I'll give you 12 words, my friends. The why of your life. If you want to email them to me, I would love to hear it. In the 12-word answer, what's the why, the moral why of your life? And if you can do that, it will really change how you see things. That's how being a performing musician made it possible for me to stand up before you and talk about and say these words that I say today. It just isn't the music. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You were talking about when we're thinking about the outrage industrial complexes, you put it, we always like to think of the other people that we disagree with as that image. And I was thinking about this question to ask: who's your favorite politician when it comes to personal conduct, their professionalism, their ethics, not necessarily their politics? And my mind came up with my favorite politician when it came to politics. So I was curious what yours was in order to find a different model to base my
tell me
actions
first,
off
who's
of.
yours?
Amash.
Amash, Justin Amash.
Yeah.
Why?
Similar beliefs and policy ideas that I have.
But why do you think he stands up as somebody who's really fighting against these tendencies that I'm talking about?
Well, I was thinking about that, the image the GOP posted on St. Patrick's Day of Beto O'Rourke, and he came out against that. But he's always been principled in his responses, and I've never seen him be snarky or contemptuous.
So you feel that he's honest, he's straightforward, sometimes controversial, but
Yeah.
he treats people with respect and he does not express contempt. That's your view? Fine, that's good. I meet people all the time, and the politicians that I meet you've never heard of that I like the most. Why? Because they're state and local politicians. State and local, man, that's where the action is. You know, the problem with the over-federalization of politics is it's a total reality show. It's basically nothing more than political entertainment. If you want to find the people that are actually working across party lines, trying to bring people together, treating other people with respect, you're not going to find it today very much in the House or the Senate, and certainly not in the executive branch of the federal government. You're going to find it in people that are actually trying to make cities run. For all I know, you've got some great ones right here in Dayton. Certainly you're going to find a bunch here in Ohio. And I find them all the time. I have a lot of friends who are governors, and they really, really care what the other side thinks. Not because they have to, but because they should. And that's what actually I find, and that's what really gives me a whole lot of comfort. The good thing about the American political system is it tends to flow upstream. And so if you want to see what's actually going to come to the American federal government, look at what's happening in state and local. And that's what I think we're going to see in the future. So all of the people that I like, you know, Governor Doug Ducey from Arizona. I love that guy. He actually cares what Democrats think, even though he's a conservative Republican, because it's the right thing to do. It doesn't mean he does what they like, but it means he cares what they think, and he treats everybody with respect. That's one example from that. And that's what I urge all of us to look at if we want to feel better about politics today. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So in 2008, an author called Bill Bishop, he wrote a book called The Big Sort, where he's talking about the self-segregation of Americans over time. I guess what he was saying was that Americans over the past, say, 30 to 40 years have been moving into communities or living in communities that essentially they share the same cultural values, the same social beliefs, and that they may not be able to interact with other people who live outside their community in that way. So how do we overcome this self-segregation in American culture?
So there was The Big Sort was a huge best-selling book that made this point. Thomas Schelling was an economist who won the Nobel Prize in economics for more or less making the same point. And people tend to self-segregate, and they always have. The problem is not that they tend to self-segregate. The problem is that we become really, really good at it, right? That's the point of The Big Sort, right? I mean, back in the day, most of you grew up in communities that were not really diverse, but more diverse than what you can live in today. By the way, the biggest area of non-diversity besides ideology that I'm talking about is socioeconomic diversity. So, you know, back when I was a kid, I grew up in a lower middle class neighborhood. A lot of people around us were poor, right? That was normal. Poor by today's standards. Poor by those days' standards, as a matter of fact. That wasn't odd. That's just the way things were. Today, you know, my kids don't really know any poor people. I mean, it's not that we have any discrimination or we're afraid or something, but we're just not in circumstances where we're going to see poor people. That's hugely deleterious. The fact that it's become so easy, so ordinary for us to self-sort along these lines. The way that we can live better lives is for us to choose not to self-sort, is the way that works. I mean, government is not a very efficient mechanism for diversifying populations. Just isn't very good at it. I mean, the government tries to do it, but it's almost always defeated. Now, one of the things that we have to do is to non-discrimination laws are incredibly important, such that people can't, through regulations, sort. I mean, we have to fight against those things, and that can be really effective. But at the same time, one of the things that actually has been most effective in creating more racial diversity, which has been great for America, has actually been that people like it. People actually like it. They want to go someplace where people are different than they are. One of the reasons that people actually like being at universities like this is they can be around people who kind of look different than they are, had different experiences, grew up speaking different languages, people from different parts of the country. And so if we can create more taste for diversity per se, different kinds of diversity, we're going to be better off. For the purpose of my remarks tonight, I want to create more of a movement where you're super interested in being around people who think totally different than, what's your name? You want to be around people who think very differently than Caleb because it's fun and interesting for you to be in that. And if we can create a movement of people who want to do that and are not afraid of that, there's a huge amount of fear among people your age to be around people. You know, you go to college campuses and they have safe spaces and trigger warnings and all that. Why is that? That's because of fear. That's fear of something that's different. That's like unsafe. I feel unsafe. You're not unsafe. You need to be around different types of ideas. And so I want to create a movement where you're out looking for that and enjoying it. And that taste, I think, will go a long way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Dr. Brooks.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for speaking tonight. I was able to take a lot of notes on my phone, so hopefully I get extra credit for that. So I'm currently in the developmental process of starting my own organization on campus that promotes dialogue and brings people together on a certain controversial topic that they don't normally want to talk about.
Like what?
Things like one of my favorite, so it's inspired from a YouTube channel called Middle Ground, and one of my favorite topics was college versus dropouts. Being a college student myself, I could never think of myself going against the social norm of being a dropout. And so to understand what goes through people's mind of dropping out of college and pursuing something totally else for their lifestyle. So one of my concerns with this whole project is that a lot of college-age students don't want to talk about this stuff. Me personally, I love talking about politics with my dad, but I don't meet friends that actually want to talk about what they feel on a certain topic or politics in general. So I want to know about your experience. Obviously, you've worked in an academic field of how would you get college students to actually not just treat others with warm-heartedness, but also give voice to their actual concerns.
Yeah. So I think that the answer to this question is to take on, what we need to take on is not the inability to talk to each other, but the fear. I mean, it was kind of what we were talking about here just a second ago. I have a lot of data that show that people your age are more fearful than in generations past. There's a very interesting book by a guy named Jonathan Haidt and his co-author Greg Lukianoff. They wrote a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. It was a bestseller earlier this year. And there's a lot in there about how there's not enough diversity on campuses and all that. But the really interesting part of that book for my money is the fact that there's a climate of fear among young people. It starts off with people my age, parents that don't let their kids out, that basically don't have free-range kids. So, you know, people over 40, when you ask what's the first time you went out on an errand or walked to school by yourself, it's like 5, people over 40. People under 30, it's like 13. It's like a huge difference, and that's the fault of people my age that won't let their kids out of the house. Then there's the adjudication of disputes, helicopter parenting, college campuses that do have the safe spaces and the trigger warnings, and the result is that there's a real fear of conflict. And you know, and the downstream effect of that is not just the inability to talk about these hard things. The downstream effect of this is what I talked about before. People get out of college, people in their 20s are about 30 percentage points less likely to date than when I was in my 20s. 30% dating. I mean, look, love is the nuclear fuel of happiness. Romantic love is the most supercharged kind, and people are less likely to be in romantic love as a result of fear. In the Bible, fear and love are the two opposites. Hate is not the opposite of love. Fear is the opposite of love. Love drives out fear, according to St. John. And we also know, according to all psychologists, that fear is the ultimate negative emotion. So if you want to do this, and we want to do this better, you have to encourage people, you have to create a movement of bravery. To say, I don't care about conflict. It's fine. Bring it on. I am brave. I'm not weak. I'm not afraid. I'm going to fight back against people in their 50s and 60s that are trying to tell me that I'm unsafe if I hear something I disagree with. On the contrary, you know, this has got to be the ultimate way of backlash against the people my generation that are hurting people that are your generation, because we're making you afraid. And your movement, when you bring people together, step number one is to tell people to stop being afraid. And if they can get past the fear, they can talk about anything and it'll be okay. Thank you for that. Nobody at that mic. So yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Is this the last one, Eric? Is this the
Yes,
last? Okay,
last question.
Last one, Jackson? Okay.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I am also the father of 3 children, each of them about a year or 2 older than yours.
I'll pray for you too.
One of them is a budding musician. The divide that you've addressed in many respects has to do with politics, right versus left. I'd like to ask you to speak as an educator about the generational perspective and the divide that's there. You've already started on that a little bit, but I'd like you to focus on 2 words if you could. First, the word institutions. I heard you do an interview on your book where you addressed that issue and you said that's an important word for you. My sense is that the older generations put great faith, maybe too much faith, in institutions. And yet the younger generations perhaps put too little faith in them or don't have a sense of how they are built or sustained. And yet, there is a high awareness of networking. I think Niall Ferguson tried to address this in his book on the tower and the square. Could you just reflect a little bit on the connection between those words, institutions and networks?
Yeah, thank you. I do think an awful lot about institutions, and the reason is it's slightly different than that in the context of this work that I'm doing now. As a social scientist, I tend to be a very, very institutionalist. You know, I got a problem, I'm going to find an institution to fix it. You know, I'm going to be a government program or, you know, a market mechanism or, you know, politicians or leaders or, you know, institutions. The problem is that when you really want a true social revolution, actual social revolution comes at the level of the individual and the person's heart. You need institutions too. You can do both, right? You don't have to choose, right? But there's a tendency for us to, people my age and with my training, to over-rely on institutions and to not pay attention enough to the extent to which each of us can have a personal social movement, a personal revolution that starts within. That's the reason I've written a completely different kind of book. You know, I've fallen back in love with the self-improvement stuff. Not because I think it's all good, a lot of it's really claptrap and junk, right? But because it does talk about each person being the master, each person being able to change things from within. And then only then can we scale up to have institutions that can actually be helpful to us. Now, when we do, as a generational matter, it's true, it's not so much about institutions as it's about trust. Trust is really different as you go through different groups of people. The younger you are, the less likely you are to have trust. What's that related to? To fear. Trust and fear are related to each other. Distrust comes from fear. You know what the ultimate manifestation of this is, by the way? That today, people are 1/2 as likely to move for work as they were in 1970. Everybody thinks that young people today are super mobile. No, 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 no. As this generation has grown up, mobility, geographic mobility, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, has been cut in half with respect to how often people are likely to move, which is it's just a problem with trust in what I can do, trust in institutions to actually be able to serve the labor markets or whatever I'm looking for, and fear about what actually the future brings. That's really, really problematic. So what do we need to do? We need to fix the institutions, set our hearts on fire, and inculcate an environment in which people can trust themselves and institutions more. And when you have parallel lack of trust in myself, in the government, in nonprofit institutions, in the judiciary, in everything, because actually you see trust levels falling in everything, you basically have an endemic fear problem in our population. And that's what we need to take on. And that's what I want you and me to work on together. Thank you again.